Okay,
Welcome. Yeah. Welcome. This is Pamela Conley Ulich, and I'm here with Bruce Lee Silverstein. This is our take two. If I can get the first, we did one question before, and if I can get that uploaded, I will. I apologize, Bruce. This is an interview for the Malibu City Council for the race that will be on November 3rd. And there are 8 men running, no women, unfortunately. And but we all have to do what we can during COVID to get to know these candidates better. I know some I've just met, others I don't know them at all. So I'm really doing this to educate the community, not the computer, and for faith, love, and hope. That's like how I'm living my life right now and where I am in my life. So without further ado, Bruce, welcome for the second time. We're so grateful for your service and your sacrifice.
Thanks, Pamela. You know, you mentioned that there are 8 men running, and that's true. There are. There was one woman who was in the running, who submitted her nomination paper, and who, in my view, was wrongfully excluded based on an erroneous legal analysis. Still like to see that corrected. I don't think it's too late yet, but we are where we are. I've made efforts to
let's hope women make 50% up 50% of the population, and it would be really nice for us to have representation, and not just the Malibu City Council, but in all elected positions. So hopefully this will inspire women to run in the future, and we appreciate you running too. It's nothing about you running. Everyone who runs should be commended, no matter what. So thank you.
You're welcome. I totally get that. I mean, we need more diversity in general. I'm 59 years old, and I think I'm the youngest of the 8 men running for city council. And, you know, we need something more than old white men on city council. That's just the way the whole country, we need more than old white men running the country.
Good answer. I love it. So I'm going to ask you some questions, and then we are going to put you on the hot seat, and you're going to answer. So welcome again. Thank you. And first 2 questions are pretty easy. Why are you running, and how long have you lived in Malibu?
Okay, so I'll take them in reverse order, because how long have I lived here is an easier question to answer. It's just a number. I've lived here just about 9 years. I moved here in October of 2011. I lived on Carbon Beach for 3 years, and it was paradise. In fact, I would have stayed there the rest of my life if I could have. But we were actually exiled as a result of short-term rentals above our head that caused us a lot of grief and destroyed the serenity of living on the beach. So I purchased a house on the hill overlooking the ocean behind City Hall. And that's where I live. That's where my family lives, and we love it here. I can't imagine living anywhere else the rest of my life. Why am I running for city council? Well, you know, if you go to my website, brucesilverstein.org, there is an answer there. And I don't say that just to promote my website. I say that because the answer written there is going to be a lot more detailed than the answer I'm going to give you orally. But in a nutshell, I care about Malibu. I care about the community. And I was actually asked to run by outgoing council member Wagner. More than once, he said that he appreciated the comments I make at City Council, the work I've done for the community outside of City Council, and thought that council needed somebody like me. I'm humbled by that. But more importantly than having been asked, I am a lawyer. I practiced law for over 30 years, and it really amazes me that we do not have City Council who's a lawyer. We did at one time. I understand there might have been multiple lawyers. Actually, you're a lawyer. When you were on city council, there may have been more than one lawyer, but it's been a decade since there's been a single member of city council who's a lawyer. And that's very anomalous. If you look around the area, you go into the valley, if you go towards Santa Monica and beyond, if you go north to Ventura and beyond, you're going to find lawyers on city council everywhere, absolutely everywhere. And there's a reason for that. Lawyers bring knowledge of the law, of how to make law, how to construe law, and how to solve complicated legal problems. And that's what city council does. It makes the law, it construes the law, and it solves complicated legal problems. And of course, they have a city attorney who helps with that obligation. But the city attorney, well, That's the case everywhere else. They all have city attorneys also, but they also have lawyers on the council, just like Congress is full of lawyers. And you need a lawyer on the city council for a number of reasons: to challenge the city attorney when the city attorney isn't necessarily correct. Lawyers fail. Lawyers sometimes make mistakes. I have to say, I've observed a lot of them on city council here. You need a lawyer who can actually ask nuanced and informed questions of the lawyer. Maybe the advice isn't digestible by lay people, and you need a further to dig down deeper. And sometimes city attorney just needs help. Cost the city money to employ a city attorney. If you got some lawyer on city council, you get free legal service. So those are predominantly the reasons.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because when I was serving on the city council, there were 3 of us, but I could do the formula retail ordinance, and I drafted it to be considered by the city council. And this is way back, and I think early 2000s, and didn't go anywhere. But another example is the mask ordinance, which could have been put forth and voted on in a majority rules vote if somebody had put that on as their council item. It's very simple. It didn't have to be an emergency ordinance. So that's, I think, an interesting point that you make in a concrete example.
Well, when you raise that mask ordinance, not only did they not do it right procedurally, in my view, but if you read the ordinance they proposed, it was, with all due respect, it was preposterous. It basically just said you must be wearing a face covering whenever you leave your personal residence. Full stop. I mean, it had exceptions for the type of people that it applied to, but it did not have any further guidance as to when you needed to wear a mask. Just when you leave your place of residence. So I get in my car, I drive out of my garage, I've now left my place of residence. That's gone. I go to take my dog for a walk on my deserted street. There's 10 houses here. People are not out there very often. I'm not within 100 feet of anybody. I have to be wearing a mask. That's not what is provided for elsewhere. And in fact, it was interesting. The staff report said this was modeled after Hermosa Beach's ordinance, and it wasn't. Hermosa Beach's ordinance, which is there to be copied, says you must wear it in certain specified places in Hermosa Beach, and you must wear it when you're going to come in contact with other human beings. And that makes sense. That's the guidance we get from the health community. But this was ridiculously overbroad. A first-year law student could have drafted it better. And
well, I appreciate that a lawyer's running, because having served, I think it helps when it comes to drafting laws. Like this is an example that happened last week. So, but when I want to go back to the questions, and then what are your favorite things about living here in Malibu? Tell us about that.
You have broken up. Internet connection has frozen.
Okay, I am going to it's on, so maybe it's yours. Check your internet.
Hopefully you can hit record to keep this, because
yeah, it's it's still recording for me. I'll chat with you. Let me just it might be your internet.
We are experiencing technical difficulties. Please stand by.
Okay, we can hear you. So I don't know if it's my internet, or yours. Mine looks like it's
this is one of the frustrating things about living in Malibu. There's a lot of great things about Malibu, but internet connectivity is not one of them.
Okay, so you are still on. I'm just checking my internet. Bruce, are you still there? I think you're unmute.
Yes, it goes to mute by default when it reconnects.
Okay, so we're still recording. Everything is still okay. I think it was your internet. So it was the west side of town last time, and maybe the east side of town.
Who knows? But in any event, I'm glad to be back. As I was saying during the intermission, One of the frustrating things about living in Malibu, and there's so many great things, but one of the frustrating things about Malibu is internet connectivity. It absolutely, for lack of a better legal term, sucks.
So tell us about what you like, your favorite things about Malibu. That's where we left off.
Right. Well, I love Malibu as a place, and I said the other day, in fact, I was talking to city council about the short-term rental ordinance. There's Malibu, the geographical area, and there's the city of Malibu. There's a lot about the city of Malibu I'm not fond of, but the area that's known as Malibu that actually, was here long before there ever was a city is just a magical place. It's why I moved here after I semi-retired from the practice of law, to enjoy the environment, the beauty, the serenity. I just feel at one with nature here. One of my favorite things to do is just to go outside and feel the breeze and just feel at one with nature. Watch the hawks soaring over my home on my back deck, which I used to see a lot more of before SCE destroyed the lot that is down below my home. But I still get to see the hawks from time to time. And this is just a piece of paradise. It's amazing that it is only 15, 20 miles from the city of Los Angeles, the second largest city in the country, one of the largest enclave, because it's not an easy thing to do, and it is slowly eroding.
So you goes to our next question. It's Sunday morning. Tell us what your typical routine is on a Sunday morning. What do you do?
I'm sorry, could you ask that again?
Let's say it's a Saturday or a Sunday morning. It's a weekend. What is your typical routine? Tell us about what you do. What do you do that?
Okay, well, being semi-retired, I work sporadically. There's no difference between a Saturday morning, Sunday morning, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And since the COVID situation began, it's Blur's Day. Every day is Blur's Day. There's today, yesterday, and tomorrow, and that's pretty much all there is. We don't think of the days of the week. But I do have a morning routine. It's a spiritual routine, and I'm not going to burden you with the details of it, but I do go outside every morning with my dog, and I say a Native American prayer that is in tune with nature, and I do some spiritual reading, and I play some games on the internet. Every morning I post a inspirational, they're called memes, on Facebook for my friends, and I do that again in the evening. But my day, it's not very interesting. I go outside and enjoy nature. I watch the news, the fake news often. It's very frustrating, actually. I play on my computer, I communicate with people, and I have over the past few years done a lot of work, non-compensated work to help our community. That's pretty much what I do on a given day. And since I started running for council, I spent a lot of time campaigning.
Good. Well, now I'm going to ask you, we're going to give you some tougher questions. So I want you to imagine it's a red flag warning and the fire is in the hills behind you, and the sheriff department is on your street with their loud speaker saying, evacuate now, evacuate. What are you going to do?
Well, it's not, you don't have to really imagine that very much, because it kind of happened 2 years ago. Absent the sheriff, it was a phone call instead of a sheriff. But we did experience that. I was fortunate, I'll say, I'm going to answer your question directly in a moment, but I was fortunate enough 2 years ago that the fire wasn't roaring down the canyon where I live. It was quite a distance away. And my wife was insistent immediately get out of the house. She had packed a bag the night before, and she just wanted to get in the car and leave. But I knew that we had time. So I made a cup of coffee. I did my morning routine. And when that was over, we left. And we hunkered down at the shopping center down the road where the Ralph's is, to see if we would have to really leave or not really leave, with a lot of other people. But if I was told you have to get out of here immediately, I'd have to think twice about whether to do it, given the prior experience with the Woolsey fire, because as everyone knows, it's not like, for the most part, the fire roared through Malibu. For the most part, the homes in Malibu that were destroyed from embers floating into Malibu, and could have been dealt with garden hoses, and many were. And it's just it's a tragedy. I mean, the fire is a
Yeah.
tragedy in its own, but that so many homes were lost that could have been saved by community members who weren't forced from their homes is a real tragedy. But so would have been having paradise here where everybody gets killed. So you got to strike a balance. But I would assess the situation. If I really were in danger, clearly I'd leave. And if not, though, I think the next time this happens, I might be inclined to stay.
Well, just so you know, people like my husband and I, we did use our garden hoses and we did save houses. And Saturday, the next day, even houses were catching fire across the street. We were able to flag down a fire truck that happened to be coming by. And my 90-year-old neighbor didn't leave, and her embers, she's got railroad ties, and they kept reigniting for 5 days. So it was really scary. And the garden hoses, let's hope there's water. But now I want you to go back to that scenario.
Let me just add one other thing, which is
Yeah.
that, I actually looked a couple days ago on the city website to see if there was an evacuation plan. And if there was, I couldn't find it. I've been told there is one, but whether there's one or not, and I think if there isn't one, that's unforgivable. But the very fact that I can't find it is a problem. What I did find was a series of maps. Like I clicked on some link that seemed like it was saying it was an evacuation plan, and it was just a bunch of maps that I couldn't make heads or tails of. So
We'll have to look for that. We have the Point Doom Neighborhood Watch Public Safety Disaster Preparedness Debate October 3rd. So that's something that, we can talk about further. That's a good idea. But now I want you to go back. I'm going to ask you another question. And again, it's a red flag warning. The fire has been determined by the fire chief that it's going to burn from Topanga past Pepperdine to, let's say, Latigo Canyon. That's where it is. You are now the mayor of Malibu, and you have been told to evacuate.
One of us has got a bad connection again.
Okay, let me see. I can hear you.
Now I can hear you again.
You can't hear
I can
me?
now,
Okay.
but you were frozen for a little bit.
Okay, sorry. So you are now the mayor of Malibu, and you have been told to evacuate. What are you going to do as the mayor of Malibu? You heard it was the fire chief said it's going to burn from Topanga to Latigo. What are you going to do?
Well, I think at a bare minimum, I got to get north of Latigo. Not going to burn in the fire that's going from Topanga to Latigo. But if I'm able to, I'm going to stay as close in proximity to the city as I can. And the most important thing is, look, the fire department needs to be able to do its job. Hopefully they will do their job. The sheriffs need to be able to do their job. And they did it quite effectively last time, maybe too effectively. But I think the more important issue here is what happens after there's not an immediate danger. And you do have a great number of residents who hopefully lived through the danger and are now stranded, in essence, in the evacuation zone. What do you do about it? And the answer is you don't treat them like criminals. Okay, granted, they disobeyed a mandatory evacuation, but you don't treat them like criminals. You treat them like the heroes and brave people that they were, who probably helped save a lot of homes, and you get them supplies. And if you're not able to get past law enforcement to get them supplies, you go to the press, because that's just not acceptable. What I understand our city did last time was treat these people along with the law enforcement like they were criminals, and that's just unforgivable.
Well, here's an issue. Let's say City Hall and the EOC, and the city manager wants to have it to be in Santa Monica. What are you going to do as the mayor?
Well, first of all, as a resident, I'm not super familiar with the details of how that works. So it's hard for me to answer sitting here today what I would do in a circumstance where I'll have a lot more information than I have today. You say as the mayor, the mayor is just one of 5 members of city council. The mayor doesn't have any specific authority that it requires 3 members of city council for city council to do anything. But in the context of acting with other members of city council, to the extent that we're capable of having emergency meetings, again, I used to say as a lawyer all the time, and I actually believe this even more from a spiritual standpoint, you never know what you're going to do in a circumstance in the future that doesn't currently exist. especially an urgent circumstance. There's no way of
Well,
knowing. You call upon everything you do know and try to make good decisions based on all the facts on the ground.
well, you can learn from past mistakes too. And I think it was a major mistake personally to move the EOC, which can be virtual too, to anywhere near Santa Monica. We have the Zuma Beach parking lot with the LA County Lifeguard headquarters. It's a simple no-brainer. They could put it there. There's now, there's trailers you can use, an EOC trailer. LA County has these. When I was the acting mayor, when the first fire came through, we were at Pepperdine and we had the EOC at Pepperdine. Pepperdine wasn't evacuated last time. That could have been a no-brainer to go there. I'm sorry.
I completely agree with everything you just said. I will say you did say Pepperdine was part of the fire, so Pepperdine wouldn't work in that hypothetical.
Yeah, well, exactly. But remember, they didn't evacuate. But my point
Different
is,
fire,
it also burnt up to LA County Sheriff, the station in Lost Hills,
Yeah,
right
well,
up 20 feet within the door, and they did not evacuate. The sheriff.
I'm totally with you. Zuma Beach makes perfect sense. In fact, I thought the beaches, other than the issue of smoke, I didn't really understand why the first step of evacuation wasn't get people to the beaches, because the beach is not going to burn. You can make then informed decisions after you're all down at the beach as to which way to go, whether to go, how to go. But the confusion of just telling everyone to get out of Malibu was not what works.
Right, and the other thing is you do need to have an N95 mask. You have to have that because you can have major damage to your lungs. So you have to be prepared, you have to know. But when or if you get elected, there is a manual, the EOC manual, and I'm gonna urge you and all the city council members to get a hold of that and read that, because the mayor's job is also to communicate to the public and work with the fire chief. And when I was the mayor, the fire chief was amazing and actually helped me serve the community through communicating about getting prepared to evacuate, like get your go bag, get what you need, your medications, your passports, etc. Fill your gas tank. These are simple procedures, but you can start that, communicating that, like you said, via Facebook, via Twitter, all these other tools. As the acting mayor, you can communicate directly, and I hope you feel empowered.
One of our connections.
Okay.
One of our
Empowered.
connections is stalled again.
Okay, so I'm still good.
I'm checking mine.
I can hear you, so we'll see. But
all right, well, it says I have a secure connection on my computer.
okay,
I can hear you fine now.
Okay, so I guess everyone's listening to this. Who knows? So getting on to the next question. If there's one legacy that you hope to leave behind when your term expires, if it's 4 or 8 years, if you have one legacy, what would your legacy be?
It's gone again.
I can still hear you, Bruce. I can hear you.
Yeah, I can't hear you.
Okay.
I don't know what that tells us about the connection, but your picture keeps freezing and your sound goes out. On my camera, I can see myself moving fine. Now you're back again.
Okay. All right. This is Malibu. We're working on it. What is your one legacy you want to leave?
So, I was just actually, before this call, I was writing answers to your 20 questions, and that was one of the questions that I had just got done answering. A good leader is kind of behind the scenes and not even seen and known. I remember seeing a West Wing episode many, many years ago. It might have been the first episode where the president was saying the best days of the presidency are when no one knows there is a president because nothing needs to be done. And a lot of things that do need to be done get done quietly. The legacy that I would hope to leave, and I don't care whether it's attributable to me in any way, shape, or form or not, but I would hope that if I'm elected, by the time my term is expired, we would have a city manager, a city attorney, and a city staff who are working for the best interests of the community, not working to balance the budget. That's important, but working to be responsive and responsible to the people that live here and doing what the people that live here want. I think that's been lacking, and I think that's what's necessary. People here, the people that live here that basically own the city, the residents, feel like the city's at odds with them left and right. And the legacy I would hope to have, which again, I wouldn't care if it's my legacy, but I'd like to leave office if I'm elected with the city functioning better in coordination with the community.
Yeah, I will let you know, when we did have the Point Doom station here, the relief center, Riva, the city manager, and Skylar did come. And if it's freezing, I apologize.
Is there a way to put a pin in this and maybe have me try to reload my computer? Because I don't know whether it's at my end or not. I've been on a lot of Zoom calls over the past week and I haven't had problems, but I keep bouncing out on this one.
Okay, let me stop the recording.
Is there a way to see?
Yeah, I can pause. Okay, I just resumed the recording and we left off, you just described your legacy you want to leave. And I just wanted to let you know, when the Point Doom Center was here, the relief center, we needed gas for the generators and water, et cetera. Yeah. Riva did come, and she did inspire the Malibu Strong. Like, she helped, say, look, we need inspiration for people. Can you help? And so I do want to give her credit for that. And Skylar came too, and Senator Henry Stern came, and they were great. So I do want to give the credit to where it was due, and I appreciate her doing that. And it kind of goes along with what your legacy is, to help the people of Malibu. So
was that during the evacuation or after the evacuation?
It was during the evacuation. I have a picture of her too. I don't remember the day, but I have it. So now we're going to go on to the next question. One weakness. If you tell us about, if you have one weakness.
I have more than one weakness. Everybody does. Anyone that doesn't think they have a weakness, that's probably their strongest weakness. Most weaknesses are also assets to some extent, because in my experience anyway, most of my greatest weaknesses are an overabundance of that, which is an asset. And I think my greatest weakness, which also is my greatest asset, is my tenacity for getting what I think, for doing what I think is right and accomplishing what I think is right. I don't act precipitously. I act in an informed and I think rational way. But once I come to an understanding of what needs to be done, like a dog with a bone. And that's both good and bad, because it doesn't necessarily help to compromise with people who are who have a different view. But I do have to say, I used to get frustrated when I was on other councils and committees, because I have a history of that, not as city council, but other kinds of councils. And I used to feel frustrated when I would fight hard for something and not get it. But one of my partners said to me one day, and this was really helpful to me, he says, you may not have gotten what you wanted, but you actually moved it in the direction of where you were, and you don't realize that. So, but I do think one of my greatest weaknesses is that I don't know how to take a no. I look for yes.
Good for you. If you spot it, you got it.
Exactly.
Now, if you weren't running for November 3rd city council race, who are the three people that you would vote for?
That's a great question. Well, I'd clearly vote for Steve Euring and Andy Lyon, because I actually am hopeful that if I'm elected, they will also be elected. And, we're not running on any kind of a slate, but it's a very clear, there's a divide between the 8 candidates that are running for office, which is, there are 3 who are running on a platform of change, reform, government reform, environment first, not as little development as possible. And yes, the economy is important. Yes, fiscal responsibility is important, but quality of life is also important. And you don't just look at what cost-saving measures you can achieve by not doing things that may be important to the community. So that's where I come from. That's where I believe those other 2 candidates come from. The other 5 have a different view. I'd have a very hard time selecting among the other 5 who my 3rd vote would be for. So I still haven't decided. Well, I don't have to decide who my 3rd vote would be for, because my 3rd vote is going to be for me no matter what. So I'll just leave it at that.
Well, just so you know, Andy and Steve, they have not participated when I've asked them to do this interview, and I'm very disappointed in that. And hey, it's their right, but for me, that's not a good sign at all, at
Well,
all. So
well,
I'm going to tell you right now, I hope you keep looking, and I hope you keep an open mind.
I will, but let me just say, I said there's no slate, right? Everybody has pros and everybody has cons, even me, obviously. And I am saying what I said based exclusively on what I know they hope to achieve, not based on the way they go about achieving it, not based, and personalities are interesting all across the board, including mine, but I do believe that their objectives are aligned with my objectives, and I believe that it will be more difficult to achieve my objectives with any of the other five. But it'll be what it'll be, and
Yes,
I'm very good at working with whatever I have to work with.
good. So let's say you're elected too, and what are your three first actions that you're going to take? What are you going to address, and how are you going to address those three issues?
Well, this is not a popular answer with some people, and it's a very popular answer for others. The first thing I'd like to see addressed, which is addressable, is the identity of the city manager and city attorney. I have problems with both of them, and the city council has the capacity to replace them fairly promptly. I believe that there are some issues about the way city council meetings are conducted in a way that I believe are not fair to the community, and you can make changes to the way things operate fairly quickly. You can make changes to the way the agenda is established fairly quickly. You can certainly start becoming responsive to community members immediately. You may not be able to achieve what they want immediately, but you can start finding out what they want and advocating for it immediately. I was speaking to the Malibu Times yesterday, and they asked, what is the most critical problem facing the city? And I said, of the four things that I'm standing for in my campaign, environment, safety, economy, and government reform, there's no one that's more important than the other. But then the question is, as you asked, what can be done first? Forget what the most important is. What can you do first? The answer is the reform issues are the things you can do first. That's not to suggest that they're more important than the others, because they're not, but they're the kinds of things you can take immediate action with respect to. The other things take more time.
Okay, so the reform, look at the city manager, look at the city attorney, and then what's your third thing? Because three.
Being more responsive to the community and the way
Okay.
the council meetings themselves are conducted.
Okay, good. Now we're going to talk about COVID, and I just was curious, how has it affected you and your campaign?
Well, how it affected me is beginning the second week of March, I guess. My family, we started not quarantining, but sheltering in place, and we have not stopped. I have two adult sons. They did not live with us for the past decade, but they're both unattached, so we invited them to come live with us, and they have, which has been kind of nice. I mean, there's a silver lining in everything, and silver lining here has been my family's a lot closer now than we've been in a long time. But my wife is slightly immune compromised, so we're being exceedingly cautious, perhaps more cautious than we need to be. So how has it affected our lives? We live in our home. Fortunately, we live overlooking the photo that you see behind me that I'm using as my screen. That's what I actually live in front of if I'm out on my deck. And you see that from my living room, my bedrooms. So there's worse places to be quarantined. I go out to the market every few weeks. I used to go every other day to pick up a couple items. I knew all the people that work there, but now I go every 3 weeks or every 4 weeks if I can. I come home with 2 carts full of food and supplies. Very difficult, and a lot of anxiety involved in that. As far as campaigning, hey, I've never campaigned before for anything, so I have no clue how much different this is. I imagine, in fact, I would love to be able to walk through the entirety of Malibu, go to every house, knock on the door if people will open it, not COVID-wise, if this were normal times, if people would open the door, have a conversation. But I obviously can't do that. In fact, I've made a commitment to conduct this entire campaign virtually. I have declined invitations to socially distance with people physically. I'm not willing to take that risk for me, and I'm not willing to take that risk for others. And I even have campaign assistants, supporters who've said, well, I'll go door to door for you, or I'll go hang things on people's doorknobs. I said, no, I don't want you doing that. You know, there's more important things than winning a campaign. And everyone being safe and healthy is one of them.
I appreciate that a lot because I've had a lot of issues with our family. So thank you for sharing that. Now we're going to turn to the budget real quick. And there's a lot of issues that are coming up. As you know, I'm sure you're looking at that budget and studying it. Do you have any suggestions about the budget, how it can be improved? What do you foresee, like the number one thing coming down, and how can you fix it?
Well, that's a tough one. I'll start off by saying I'm not sure that we're about to go off the cliff that we're being told we're about to go off of. Could be, but I'm not sure about that. And the reason I say that is the last city council meeting to go over the budget, what I noticed was there's a lot of analysis of how a particular action or event is going to have a specific consequence to the bottom line. Like, by way of example, if you eliminate short or complete or substantially reduce short-term rentals, you're going to substantially reduce the transient occupancy tax. That's a given. But there's no analysis given to what the upside to the city financial situation is by having more long-term rentals. There's no analysis of what the upside potentially to the city is of neighborhoods being more attractive for people to buy a home because they're not buying a home next to a mini hotel, they're buying a home in a neighborhood. That's just one simple example of where the budgeting in Malibu is myopically focused on immediate dollars. And I'm not sure that we're in as bad a situation as we're being told. I mean, property values, which result in property taxes, which go to the county, but we get a percentage of them, which are a large part of our revenue. Property values in Malibu aren't sinking like they're going to be and can be elsewhere. We've already seen that during the crisis, the housing crisis. They may go down slightly, but they won't go down significantly, and probably they'll continue to increase. There's only so much land that's by the Pacific Ocean, and we have it. So this is a very desirable community. Property is scarce, and we're going to continue to receive revenue from that a lot of other communities are going to lose out on. And as far as one area for cost cutting, though, we have a huge city staff. I don't know that we need as large a staff as we have, and I really don't know what they all do. And I'd have to learn that, obviously, as a member of city council.
Let me ask you a question, LAFCO. And when you look at this issue, I'm going to give you this assignment, is what small percentage they decided when we became a city in 1991, LA County really pushed us down, down, down. And my question to you and all the candidates is, can you get that LAFCO is the entity that decides the percentage that we keep, the city of Malibu? And is there any room for adjusting that upward, given the PCH is our main street, we have sheriff, we have public safety issues, that we can justify why we need more of that percentage of the tax? It is ridiculous how little we keep in the city and how little our budget is. When we get 6 million visitors here, we need to have more of those tax dollars stay here because they're homes that we need to protect, and this PCH, the people that come in. So I just hope you'll look into the LAFCO issue. I think it would be very difficult to get them, especially now, but it might be a possibility and maybe not, but it's just something to consider.
So, I mean, I don't know how tightly our hands are tied by the existing law and arrangements, but that is certainly something. Look, there's nothing off the table. I just got done saying that to somebody yesterday as far as budget, revenue, sources of revenue, sources of decreasing expenses. Nothing's off the table. We need fresh eyes, and we need careful eyes, and we need to consider every alternative. That would be great if we could get more of the property taxes. Achieving it, I'm sure, is going to be it's not only a Herculean task, it may be an impossible task. But you know what? I know who to turn to for assistance if I'm on city council. I'm looking at her.
Oh, well, let's go to the public safety. I know we're going to have a big discussion, and for me, this is one of the biggest issues, and it is life and death for many, especially on PCH or in our homes now. What do you feel the city's doing with public safety? Are they doing enough with the VOPs, the search, the homeless? What do you feel like you can do getting in right away on public safety? What's your priority?
The VOP, I think, could be improved. I think we could use more people, and we might even, I don't know what the limits of civilian assistance in law enforcement are. I'd have to learn that. But to the extent that we're not stretching those limits, we need to be stretching those limits in a way, obviously, that still maintains the safety of the civilians who participate. But I think there's a lot more ways in which we can be documenting things that are wrong so that the law enforcement can then do its job more easily. We outsource our law enforcement, and I don't know if we have the ability to do anything other than outsource our law enforcement, but we have contracts that very specifically say what we're entitled to, for which we pay. And one of the things that needs to be done is to fly spec those agreements to make sure we are in fact getting what we pay for. If we're not getting what we pay for, we have contractual rights. We should get what we pay for. This is not a popular view by some people who are just focused on the bottom line, but if we're getting what we pay for and it's not enough, we are going to have to find a way to pay for more, because you can't ignore protection of the community. Safety of the community is the #1 obligation of government. Health, safety, and welfare. That's the police powers of the city. So we may have to contract for more law enforcement. The homeless situation is it's a different issue, I believe, and I've spoken about this at City Council, and it falls on deaf ears. And I believe I am correct about this. The Martin versus Boise decision is blamed repeatedly for our inability to do anything. City Council throws its hands up, says our hands are tied by Martin versus Boise. Martin versus, I'm not going to bore whoever's going to watch this with a detailed legal analysis, but it's a very limited, very restricted decision. It doesn't really prevent very much. And it explicitly states that there are plenty of things that can be done, notwithstanding the limitations it creates. But it's really easy for government, when it doesn't want to do something, or it's when it's difficult to do something, at least, to say our hands are tied. And again, like I said earlier, I don't take no very easily. I search for yes. And I think there are ways to deal with the homeless population. And when I say deal with them, I don't mean in a heavy-handed, roughshod way. I mean in a compassionate, appropriate way. They are people. They're part of our community. They deserve respect and dignity, but they also need to treat our population, our residents that do have homes here, with dignity and respect as well. And we need to find a way to make that happen. Traffic is kind of outside of our control. I say that not as an excuse, but that's the first step, is it is outside of our control. But what's not outside of our control is to work with the people who do have the control. I've always been shocked whenever something is raised at city council meetings and they turn to the city manager and say, what can we do about that? And says, oh, that's the problem of so-and-so. No, it's our problem. It may be we don't have the authority to do anything about it, but it's our problem. It's bothering our community, and our job then is to work with so-and-so to get it fixed, not just say it's not our problem, it's so-and-so's problem.
I want to give you an example. The Malibu Task Force on the Homeless, I helped form that with many people, and we raised $100,000 initially to hire the people concerned and John Masseri, 2 full-time workers that came into Malibu. Carol Moss was part of it. And then we were able to, after 2 years or so, we were able to convince, because initially the city said, the homeless, we can't do anything. It's the sheriff, we have one guy, Mike Traden, and he's doing a great job. So I just want to give you that example, because we hired as individual volunteers, the people concerned to do the 2 people homeless task force, the outreach workers, full-time social workers that worked with the homeless in Malibu. And then we were able to convince the city to take over that contract, and they're still contracting with them to have 2 full-time social workers come and work on that issue. That's an example of what I see happening in the Malibu communities, Point Dume, Malibu West. We have a lot of break-ins. We have a lot of concerns right now because of the economy, and there could be civil unrest coming, if COVID doesn't go away and the economy keeps going down and no one has jobs, et cetera. So one of the issues I'm trying to work on, and I'm trying to put this for you as a city council possible person, is that we hire less expensive security guards or some type of a security independent contractors, just like the people concerned did with their 2 social workers who came here 24 or 5 days a week, 9 to 5. And maybe we contract out from like 11 at night until 5 in the morning, where people are sleeping, where we can't call. If we call 911, there's 2 cars on PCH. If they're in East Malibu, forget it. And there's a perception we're on our own. So
Yeah, let me
maybe
say,
we, go
let
ahead.
me say 2 things about that. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. One is, I have advocated publicly that we should be looking into supplementing the public law enforcement with private security. I don't know what the limitations of government using private security are. We need to find that out. But to the extent that the limitations don't exist or leave room for doing that, that's clearly something we should be exploring. The other is, I hadn't even thought about it, I'm embarrassed to say, social workers. That is the kind of help that we absolutely can be providing. I've expressed concern about well-intentioned provision of food and other things, which it is well-intentioned and it's critically important to the people that get it, but it's enabling. It basically puts up a sign that says, come to Malibu, we're going to feed you. And it just increases the homeless population here. But social workers help the people that are here. It's not, and people aren't going to come from Los Angeles because we have social workers. That's not what they're looking for. But that's what they need, but it's not what they want. Give them what they need. Don't give them what they want.
Yeah, well, it's wraparound services. It's to get them into homes and then get them the services if it's drug, alcohol, or mental health, or maybe they need a job and clothes to get a resume. I mean, it's different for every person,
Yes.
but that's what they do. But I think having private partnerships that can address these security concerns with a patrol that's not a sheriff, that doesn't cost us millions of more dollars, is a nice approach, like we did with the homeless. The city took it over. So maybe in the next 4 years, this is another area to be explored. And I don't know what the solution is. I just know that we can have something less than sheriff deputies in there, maybe helping patrol and promote safety in the neighborhoods where there are break-ins happening and there are people on the ring being recorded. We can see it's happening right now. And so hopefully that's something you'll come together with the community on. And with that, this is my longest interview, 53 minutes plus the other one. So I want to
talk a lot.
kind of wrap it up. Yeah, I did too. So I appreciate you. If you want to have one last, thing you want to tell everyone, and then also October 3rd, hopefully we'll see you at the other public safety and disaster.
Well, I guess what I'll leave you with is, and this goes back to the assets and defects, right? I'm a prolific writer. People tell me all the time, you got to write less because it's more understandable. But I believe the devil's in the details, and the more you write is actually important. In fact, I've had judges for years telling me write shorter briefs, but I win. So, the long one that they don't like works. Go to brucesilverstein.org. There's a lot of information there, much more that I could possibly convey orally. If you want to spend the time reading it, I would appreciate you doing so, because it does set forth all of what I stand for and all I hope to accomplish. If I wrote too much and you can't read it, so be it.
Well, thank you so much. And we'll see you again soon. Stay safe, stay calm, stay strong. And we'll see you again.
Thanks for the opportunity, Pamela. Take care.
Thank you. Take care.